Hello, everybody, and welcome to the LJL Officially Unofficial Podcast, Season 3, Episode 19. I am one of your three co-hosts of the podcast, Alex, otherwise known as Sexy by MaskedSwan on the internet.
What happens if people call you MaskedSwan off the internet?
The man in the middle!
He's such a gremlin. He's such a gremlin.
Initialise!
Hello.
What are you starting over there?
Currently, I'm a little bit nervous that my host is sort of like been fed after midnight and is about to like turn into a ravening monster.
He's a gremlin. He's such a gremlin.
No, I'm doing my best light L interpretation.
Impression, yeah. I'm gonna eat a potato. Does that make me L, or does that make Alex L? What does that make me?
It's,
The ratio, I suppose. L plus ratio. There you go.
I mean, I just knocked my camera over. How are you doing anyway, Sam?
Pretty good. It's been a wild few weeks. My sleep schedule is completely fucked. Putting it bluntly, between Worlds and casting and all the rest of it, I there was a point over the weekend where I filled in for Dracos, who was a bit unwell, over on like the Kia LOL series thing, for which Cadril was presenting, which was really good fun, but it basically meant I woke up having gone to sleep at 5 a.m. finishing up with Worlds, and then woke up a couple hours later to realize they needed me in the LEC studio because they were needed to fill in, and I was like, that's fine, I'll go do that. Came back, went to the sort of like Kia put on a load of food and stuff afterwards, so went to that afterwards, then came back, watched Worlds again, went to sleep, and then got to 5 a.m. afterwards and realized I'd had about 3 hours sleep in 48 plus hours and went, oh my god, Worlds is destroying me. But otherwise, it's been really good, and pretty pleased with how DFM did, even though they did eventually fall. It was a valiant effort and significantly more competitive than I think there was fears it could have been against RNG. So overall, pretty happy, just a bit exhausted.
I mean, hey, getting involved in content, being busy, watching games, that's what I want to hear, mate. It's off season now. Another man who's also in off season on the opposite side of your screens, or maybe on the opposite side of your brain, depending on how you work. People actually work like this. They hear us from different ears and stuff. It's a really interesting concept. Nymaera,
I didn't know that.
how are you?
Wait, have you got us panned out?
No, that would be honestly sicko mode.
That would be like, I've got Alex in the left ear, other Alex in the right.
It would go a bit weird if we were doing like our monologue-y stuff and like I'm talking for 2 minutes solid. It's just like just in the left, just like in the right-hand ear or something. I mean, things to think about. Yeah, what have I been doing? Well, obviously I've been watching Worlds and stuff and ruining my sleep pattern for that.
Standard, yeah.
Yep. Was hanging out on Monte Cristo stream for a bit, enlightening the viewers there about the LJL and various other regions. Also caught up with a random minicaster over there too.
Yeah, he was on there as well. It was a fun little stream.
Yeah, it was a really that was really cool because RMC is obviously very, very knowledgeable about so many different minor regions. So it's cool to kind of give them some time to kind of chat to the audience there. And then yeah, I've been doing a bit of streaming myself. I did like a 3.5 just me and a guitar stream.
He wasn't actually playing the guitar, he just had the guitar there with him.
Yeah, I actually had it. It was actually like as an intimidation prop where I'd just be like, I've got a guitar. Yeah. But no, I was like, I was doing the whole, not song and dance, but just the song part of it for like 3.5 hours, which is my voice. Why my voice is a little bit croaky. Turns out doing that is quite hard on that. But yeah, I've been doing some of my own streaming stuff, been watching the games, and yeah, overall, just trying to figure out what I'm going to do with my off-season rhythm of life. That's the plan.
As
Last
opposed
week-
to lead, you're a rhythm guitar player these days?
Ooh, sure.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Now, I was hoping for something more of that. I threw the pun out. It wasn't well received. What are you going to do?
It's been a lot of games, days of games. It's been a lot of days as well, honestly, in general. Even though it's only been 7 days. Well, 9 days, actually, since we last recorded the last podcast episode.
Time is a construct. I don't
it really does feel like that. Believe it or not, we recorded just before day one.
Why?
And then it's been all of the game days has happened and everything else. Sometimes, remember, gentlemen, we used to do a halfway one where between groups and play-ins, except for that one time when we didn't even make the knockout stage, which was fun.
That was V3
Yeah, it was.
killing our hopes and dreams because Reiner and Paz had a truly atrocious tournament.
But thankfully, while DFM are now no longer with us, in Worlds at least from a consensus, they're still in our hearts, and they're definitely in the hearts and minds of a lot of League of Legends fans. Before we do go on to that though, I'm good. I've mostly.
This guy's here.
I'm here.
Yeah.
Who is he again?
I've just watched a lot of League of Legends. I had to do a lot of VOD reviewing. I couldn't watch a lot of the games live. That's why I wasn't doing any live tweeting, because I live in a studio apartment. My partner has to get up at 6 in the morning, so like, fuck, I'm gonna stay awake till 4.
Ends. Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah. So I'm waking up more at 6 o'clock in the morning. So I've just been watching VODs in the mornings and stuff. But I mean, that's why I've been tweeting at like 9 o'clock. I'm proud of DFM. I was just late to the RNG series. But I got to experience part of it live. I got to watch like that first half and game and a half, and then I couldn't.
You got
what
the
else
good
have
bit
I been doing? Yeah, I got the good bit, and I went to sleep feeling pretty confident. And hey ho, we'll talk about that in a bit. Outside of that, what have I been up to? I don't know, mate. It feels like it's been a blur. Like, you know when you just have weeks and it's just like, I don't know where it went?
Yeah.
It feels like that. I've done a lot, I know. I've actually left the house a few days, which is
I can't believe
wild.
that.
Wow.
All right, I took this fool out, this younger brother of mine to touch grass, and he literally put a photo up saying touched dendro. It wasn't even touched grass. It's like, my God, there's not enough grass in the world to redeem this man. It was, he and Artrom are a pair. I'll leave it at that.
I look forward to experiencing this one day.
That's true.
Oh, I want to. I want
no,
it.
not all three of you together. That would be.
Oh yes. Oh, absolutely.
Can I get an adult? Could someone help?
Well, and I'll be my unhinged version, not this trying to control the narrative and make sure we have.
I'm gonna go out there with like a taser and a spray bolt. I'm gonna try and get like the quicken like a reaction from Denver.
I apologize to everyone out there for introducing.
Yeah, I've been playing Genshin too. That's the other thing which I've been doing with my life, I guess.
It's my fault.
But you're doing Genshin, Sam. Are you playing a lot of Genshin at the moment still?
I should be playing more, but no, I've been playing Persona 5 still.
Okay.
I'm crawling my up the solo queue ladder from inting my placements with. I got 2 wins out of 8 games. In fairness, 5 of those games were botted, and so I just had like people like literally running under towers for 5 games in a row. It was quite impressive.
That's good.
But even so, the climb is slowly occurring, and we're getting up there. But it'll, at the very least, we'd like to get the Diana skin that's coming into the season. So that's the plan. I'm not very good at the game, is the problem.
Diana skins? There's new Diana skins?
I believe that it'll be.
I own all the Diana skins. So if there's another oh yes, I haven't got. Yes, that's not out yet.
Is it like the one you get from the ranking? Was it championship? It's not championship. What's the name of the skin?
Wait, I need to get gold for once.
What if it's called?
Wait, is she getting Victoria skin?
I think she's the Victoria skin.
Okay. No, Nymaera, hard carry me now, please.
I can try.
Okay.
I can introduce you to my Quinn mid.
It's not boosting if they're your friend.
And if they're actually legitimately in gold right now because they haven't played in 3 years.
Hey,
Turns out you can track my rank as to when we started the LJL OU. Put
you
so
can
much time
actually.
into that.
So go into your op.gg, look at the graph, and just slowly watch it.
Yep.
When he started casting,
10 games a season, baby.
Well, he made LEC, started casting. Clearly, losing rank actually makes you a better caster. Monte Cristo was right, and maybe all these pro players are wrong.
Unironically, I find it. I mean, so the way I would avoid this in my head, being good at the game makes you a good caster. But there is more than one way to be a good caster. And honestly, playing the game is not a time-efficient way to be a good caster. Now, if you enjoy the game and you're doing it anyway and just fits into your rhythm of life, that is a bonus. But if you are a caster and that is like your main thing, and content is your grind, that's not always the most time-efficient way to do things. Now, I play the game now a lot more than I did even like a year ago, because I'm playing with friends again. I'm queuing up in fives and whatever, and playing ARAMs. Like, that does help me understand the instinctive ability to know when a play is happening.
We play as 5. Like, does that actually help?
I know, but I can also understand what you're doing wrong.
True.
But
Sam, I played with Alex last night, and he told me, he was like, you shouldn't run this way, you should have done this. And I'm just like,
you're a Jinx walking up, down mid with no one around you, and Aatrox just pop out behind you and kill you.
All I'm saying is Commander is a gremlin. All I'm saying is Nymaera is a gremlin who decides
so-
this is a
hey,
1v1
but, like,
angle. That just goes for it
the,
every time.
the overall point is that so a lot of how you cast is figuring out what's going to happen next on the map, and
Yes.
playing the game does it helps you understand the play which can happen next, and it also allows you to call people out for missing opportunities and say, actually, no, this was actually a real good chance to dive bot lane. You didn't do that. That kind of thing can very much help, but you can also do that by studying VODs too and talking to players and actually drilling the matchups in a analytical way rather than just playing yourself. It's good, but it's not the only way to be a caster.
Yeah. I had something to ask.
mean,
Yeah,
Captain
that's it.
Flowers
I
literally
just
just
want to
plays
clarify
casual
some
games.
misinformation. Apparently, the Victorious Diana skin was a leak that was disproven. So I did just Google to make sure it wasn't
well,
lying.
I don't
So
have
that
to
might
worry
save
then.
you some stress. It might still be Victorious Diana, but what it means is the Victorious skin I don't think has been decided as yet.
They
and,
announced that
double check.
before they're like a month out, right?
Something like
So
that.
people can
Anyway.
have a chance to climb if they
But
need
yes, maybe it still will be. But either way, that was the was a good leak, but a leak nonetheless. That was like false.
Well, we'll think about that. Ladies and gentlemen, obviously we are here. We are the LJL OU podcast, and believe it or not, we will talk about the LJL and its representative of Detonation Focus Me. And gentlemen, I think we should really start it with the perfect screenshot that summarizes the finite moment. What DFM? We lost the series, but I mean, we got a game, and honestly, that was in the fashion as well. Just so much good, and it proved so many people wrong, and it was so validating.
RNG had never lost to a wildcard team before that, I believe. Like,
Yeah.
and this is a team which has been playing since I mean, there were Worlds in Season 3. They've been at international events many times beyond that. Never dropped again to a wildcard. DFM ended that streak. That's pretty incredible.
And like reminded, of course, this was a DFM that started playing 0-2. They were looking a bit dicey. End up tying for second, take a game off EG, which forced that three-way tiebreaker. Sadly, can't win the position to get into second, but it was competitive to that point. They beat Loud in a best of 5. They then have to go up against this Titan of RNG who looked pretty strong with the exception of a couple sloppy games, one against DRX and then another game where it looked a bit dicey early. And thought, oh, maybe there's an angle here. But it's still a wild card that was kind of ended up coming third, fourth into RNG of all teams, the MSI champs. They win the first game handily. It's clean. It looks good. Maybe some sloppy bits later on, but that looked like a DFM handy victory. It wasn't like it was a scrappy game per se. It was in their hands. Game 2. First half of that game looks really good. The last couple games, bit of a different story, particularly game 4. But I think what really surprised me is DFM came in and it wasn't just a shock upset win. It was a good win and a competitive series, which was not what I was expecting necessarily coming into that. And that was really impressive to me. It's not what they wanted. They would have loved to get to groups again for a second year in a row. And I'm sure they go home incredibly disappointed. But you get to say you took a game off RNG. You get to say you pushed RNG, which is not something that many teams in the whole damn world can say, actually. And that's really, really, really impressive stuff. And I'm sure we'll go deeper into this with this conversation. But like as an overall picture, big improvement across the tournament to throw a few punches against a team like RNG.
That's the big one, because it was an improvement across the tournament. Because I don't know how we want to structure this. Because obviously this is actually a pretty good end to the tournament for DFM. Like taking aim of RNG.
It was, yeah.
As a minor region, in fact, I remember chatting to someone when I was going through like hiring processes for like LEC and whatever. Chatting to someone like I was chatting about just like casually about the LJL, and he said, and the guy was saying effectively, at the end of the day, what a minor region wants is relevant games. That's what they want, and these were relevant games. Particularly the first two. First one was a victory. Second one was in DFM's hands as well. Actually, I feel like they could have won that game fairly easily.
Close to theirs,
that was a game where they outplayed their way into a lead and then got outplayed into a loss. That was how that game kind of went. Now, obviously, games 3 and 4, there were some close plays in the early game, but they were largely shutouts. But the first two games were actually pretty DFM-sided for large amounts of it. And for that tournament to end like that is really cool. It puts them on the radar even more. It's just another one of these results which just gradually shifts the respect for the region and for DFM upwards and changes those expectations with it.
And it is one of those games. I am reminded of the G-Bay documentary where he talks about the greatest comebacks. And honestly, more than anything, DFM could and technically should have won that second game. Very remnant of that damn one game as well, in a sense, where they were at the precipice of winning. They could have done it, but the other team arguably came back. And arguably, I call it a comeback. I think it was a very strong game from RNG, and they were very disciplined. When they had that one opportunity, they came back and they didn't give DFM a single option back in. And honestly, in a sense, that's kind of how the rest of that series kind of went for RNG. But I don't want to go too deep into the RNG series. Let's build back up to it, gentlemen. Let's talk about, obviously, the group stage, the first round, the single round robin. Do you guys have any... out of interest, actually, I want to know, have you guys happened to see my video on the formats of play-ins?
I didn't get through all of it. I remember chatting to you about it more informally, though, outside of the video.
Yeah. No, because basically my schedule has been so whack, I've seen nothing relevant for the last week, because I have woken up, gone, what time is it? Oh my god, it's the afternoon. Let me sort my life out, sit down, watch Worlds, wake up. Oh my god, what I need to fill in for someone at work. Let's do that and fall asleep. You know, like all of that stuff. So my content consumption has been, shall we say, a little limited.
No worries. I'll give the very quick TLDR. I'm not going to do the whole repeat and reasons for why I feel justified that I can. I feel like I actually can speak with some authority on this when it comes to formats and seeding and everything due to prior experiences throughout my life and everything as both a competitor and as a TO. So yeah. I think, honestly, we could cut these two groups, get rid of groups, have it become Swiss. An open format where Pool 1 teams play Pool 1 teams in round 1, Pool 2, 2, 3, 3. After that, you then start doing standard seeding based on game time, and typically best team plays worst team. And there are ways of justifying it throughout a Swiss process. But fundamentally, have a Swiss one because everybody's live till the end of round 3. Going into round 4, only 2 teams are dead, which means there's more relevant games, which means there's less important matches, which means you don't get that kind of Istanbul thing. But that's still a pride match, and that's still important for those teams. I then also think there should be like a double knockout stage, and no one should auto-qualify being a first seed. Going undefeated means fuck all. You just get to play 1BO5, and then you auto go into the group stage, winning 1BO5. The loser of that one drop down, and the middle 4 that it would be, that's who plays a best of 5 each. Winner of those goes through and plays the loser of the top 4. Bottom 4 teams sadly just have to get kicked out. I would love a scenario where you could have like a BO3 gauntlet, right? So they're just the teams running up BO3.
I think you can do GSL, BO3 kind of like...
Well, the issue is I couldn't do that with keeping in the exact same time specimens that we currently have for play-ins. So that's what my tool was. If I could have a bit of editorial allowance, I would have had BO3s for BYG Chiefs and Idris Istanbul. Winner of those ones plays one another, and then that's just the team that's kind of that last chance qualifier in a sense. And then eventually you get your third, you get a definitive first and second are tied, and then you get a definitive third and fourth, which I think is more interesting. You get to also tell more narratives and storylines about these minor region teams because you'll actually have a BO5 series or a BO3 series, and I think that's really important because at the end of the day, my general consensus is minor regions just want to play a BO5 or a BO3 or something, and if they get to play a bunch against international talent, it's a lot more fun.
Well, I think that's actually a really good point because I'm not sure I completely agree with the whole thing about the format there because I think that in terms of qualifying first from play-ins, because we have it. The problem is not necessarily Worlds itself. It's the whole circuit impacting Worlds because you don't really have competitions which are catered towards minor regions. Play-ins is a token effort towards minor regions, let's be honest, right? You can have one team maybe per year which can make it through into the group stage as a minor region. And that's one out of like all of the regions.
It's such a brutal tournament anyway, right?
And particularly when you've got VCS back in this group and you see that Saigon Buffalo are relevant, you've got more major region teams coming into the play-ins, you are unlikely to have minor regions being out and out the best teams within that group's play-in stage. And it's going to be a hard contest.
And just to pop my head in here, what's crazy, 2 years in a row, we had minor regions make it out of play-ins. Arguably, minor regions look stronger than ever this tournament, and not a single one could make it out.
Yeah, and that is a problem in some ways, right? Because at the end of the day, Worlds is meant to, if you are if you are valuing the level of competition, then actually, yeah, you should be bringing in more major region teams. That's just the nature of it, right? Major region teams have better practice environments. They're practicing against better teams, and have better infrastructure in terms of the money they can put into it more often than not. The team like from the OPL or the LJL is not going to have the financial backing of a major region team like an LPL 4th or 5th seed or whatever it ends up being in the future. I think for the situation that Worlds is in, I think Play-ins is not a bad format because you are not getting loads of chaff games where you've gone through a second round, you're going into a second round robin with loads of meaningless games. You have 1 or 2 meaningless games possible, and we saw if that,
True.
right? I think because we had the one, was it? We had one meaningless game in this
It was
format.
the
whereas opposed to-
It was Isras versus Wildcats.
and
There
they
was just
happened
pride
to
at
me
that
at
point.
the
So
end.
who got, and
Yeah.
even then it wasn't entirely meaningless in the sense that one of these.
Oh no,
teams
the
would be going
Isras
home
crowd,
without-
the home crowd were
Sure.
Yeah, exactly, because
Sure.
one of those teams would be going home without a win.
But
in
one
terms
which
of,
is not
but
going
yes,
to have
affect
implications
those
on the actual tournament
qualification,
itself in
yes,
terms of the
yes, yes, yes,
qualifications,
yes.
right? So
Yeah.
I can understand that. I think this does go against a lot of the fears which people had about play-ins in previous years. But and also I think that what comes into what Lexi was saying beforehand though is that what you're missing out on though is actually finding out who are genuinely the better teams in a less volatile best of 5 environment. I think what we saw from DFM is that DFM are the best of 5 minor region team.
They're
Now they
very
weren't
good.
the best.
Yeah.
They are not the best of 1 minor region team. Loud beat them. You can see them losing games to Infinity at MSI 2021. We saw it to A's in this MSI this year. DFM are not the best of 1 team out of the minor regions. But in terms of a best of 5, you could see that they dropped that game 1 against Loud, but they were a very good best of 5 team. They took a game off of RNG, and I think that's a really important metric to track. And when I remember actually the conversation that we had as a group around 2020 Worlds when the format was introduced was that, hey, unless you come dead last, because that was a 5-team group at that point because VSS were out, you are going to get best of 5 international experience. DFM hadn't had a best of 5 in an international tournament since 2018.
They hadn't won. They've never won an international best of 5
and
outside
that was
of
against
Rift Rivals before
EDG,
that.
so this was
was against
weirdly
EDG.
poetic at the very end if we could have beat RNG. Oh,
And
Like Ebby threw out a tweet saying, "I finally won an international best of 5."
yeah.
Finally. How long has Ebby been playing for? How long has Udapon
so-
been playing for? They have
I'm
been
saying
looking for that for a long
I'm
time.
going to say it out loud. The English broadcast didn't catch that. LPL and LCK broadcasts both caught it, as well as apparently did a few of the other minor region broadcasts. That hurt.
It is a bit
hurt
frustrating
me
when that's
physically, but I'm just saying my piece.
And like, I know there are other questions to be had in terms of things like format. So I know Mark Z threw out something, I think it was the latest Hotline League thing where he's saying actually just scrap play-ins, have bigger groups that only best of 1 round robin, and so you just get people in those groups earlier on. I think, and that's a potential option. I hesitate to talk too much on it because I've not listened through the whole thing yet to really give a full commentary on it. And I think the other thing probably worth noting is I do think there are issues with the way Riot wants to schedule Worlds, where they do want gaps between things, where they do want the days to stay as locked as they are. And I think that does actually hurt the potential for better formats. Considering it's already over a very long period of time, but with weirdly large gaps between them, I think you do end up.
I mean, I think until the community gets their best of 5 double elimination playoffs format.
Sure. I mean, Valorant's getting it.
I mean,
lots of
that's
other
why.
Riot games
That's why.
lots of other international esports
It's
do.
what stoked
just
the
League that
flames
doesn't.
recently, because the last year Valorant has had it, but then it's really awkward to do it because I have an issue because the 2 games have very different game time when you play a best of 5 series.
Yeah, true.
Like Valorant can be a 2 to 3 hour
this
thing.
is why we don't have bracket resets in League either. Right?
Yeah.
Like some tournaments tried that at some points for League.
Wasn't it
Not
one
that
of
I
the
can remember
IGN
for
really early ones in like season 2
yeah.
or something?
I
Like
put
Fighting
yeah,
games.
I
If
feel-
it's
ESL?
Yeah. I mean, like, the other thing is that there's a big conversation in Counter-Strike right now about whether best of 3 or best of 5 finals the way forward. Because best of 5, you're looking at basically a 7-hour plus broadcast. Like, it's a very long broadcast.
And there is
for
something,
CS:GO.
so particularly in CSGO, I think it was a Richard Lewis tweet where he kind of brought this up in terms like it's too much of a good thing. Where it's like, you can get awesome ones. Like we had the best of 5 earlier in the year, right? Where it was the Machine Sponge incredible cast, best finals ever. Let's fucking find out moment. Like that was an
phenomenal.
incredible thing. And I think what you're seeing is that the upper level of the broadcast can be absolutely absurd. The upper level of the competition can be absolutely absurd, particularly in CS when you have multiple maps, and it actually forces the finalists to have hella good map pools at that point, which I don't think is a bad thing. I can understand saving it only for finals at that point, or actually not doing it at all, though, because of constraints on both like a well-being level for the players and then also the broadcast in terms of what happens if it goes overtimes every map for 4 or 5 games.
Like, what I will say though is there was a few statements from a number of the analysts in CS:GO saying, "Look, I don't know. There's been it's very heated debate, very either side on this one. But there was a very valid point out when, like, look, how many of the best of 3 finals do you actually remember as greatest of all time? And people were like, maybe there's like 1, 2 series. People go, that was the best series of all time. Or the other ones have been like, that's just it. How many of those best of 5s, though, were really something? Like, you look at particularly that latest one in Cologne recently. Phenomenal cast. In Cologne, the Cathedral of Counter-Strike. This incredible series. Was it extensive? Did everybody get to watch all of it? No. But was it arguably the best esports broadcast of the year? Probably.
Yeah, it was. I don't play CS, but I watch a lot of it. But oh my word,
that was phenomenal to watch.
Hell of a series.
Well,
I've taken this well off on a tangent. I'm sorry about that, but it's an interesting one.
I began us on a tangent, and then we just moseyed around. Ultimately, though, regardless of how you think the formats go and everything, BO1 went through. Fnatic and DRX, that was the bit of the upset, first and foremost. DRX getting that BO1 over RNG. Honestly, though, Group A kind of went how a lot of people mostly expected, outside of Loud kind of being that exciting BO1 team, and maybe Beyond Gaming not performing up to quite everybody's expectations. If you listen to the Minor Region podcast, though, you would have actually heard that there might have been something to worry about for Beyond Gaming. So, hey, crazy idea, but hey, that's another
Sorry, Nightstar and Pyro, we tried, but
we did.
Yeah. So I think the thing which happened with Group A is that we knew it was going to be hard to predict because it was very close in terms of the Pool 1 teams were not going to be unbeatable by the ones below it. DRX, RNG, they're kind of hard in that regards, right?
They were a lot for
they were on a slightly different level. And also not coming in with substitutes, which is a huge deal for EG and Fnatic.
Whereas, like, for me, based off what I'd seen from both Chiefs and... Well, mainly Chiefs at that point. I didn't really respect it from Loud, and that's on me. I didn't like spot it at that point. I thought that we would have one of those teams punching particularly hard. I thought that BYG... I think I misread BYG, but I was still down on them. Because actually, I think Minji played really well from Beyond.
He tried really hard,
His playmaking stylus was really, really good. I do think, though, ever since the departure of Maple and River from the PCS, they've really struggled to have that real successor to the top-tier mid-jungle, which actually PCS was defined by, for me, for a very long time, because Maple was that crazy defining player. It would be like if the LJL lost an Ebby, if we lost a Utapon, if we lost one of these players, which just is the rock-solid best in their role. And when you come in as a team like Beyond, which is PCS 2, so you're not necessarily going to have like the best of your region at that point too, I thought that mid jungle was going to be a bit difficult for them. As much as mid lane doesn't impact the game as much as it did in the lead up to Worlds a month and a half ago on the playoffs patches and stuff like that, I still think Minji played very well. I think as a mid jungle duo, there are a couple of issues for me there still in terms of the way that they connected, but still I want to give a specific shout out to Minji. He had a very good tournament on the
I would also say on this note that the tournament meta really, really hurt Beyond, because they got here because they were exceptional late game team fighters, particularly around empowering their AD carry. Zeri kind of died. Civ is kind of around, but is not as high priority as she used to be. And in some ways, she is there to facilitate things like Yuumi getting through to the mid game because Civ can wave clear by herself and run away. That's not the same as, okay, we get Zeri to 4 items, we win now. And that is what a lot of teams got to Worlds on. We kind of saw it at EU Masters as well, where teams that qualified very high off playing a particular style, if they couldn't adapt to what the meta was now, which was things like the Aatrox topside, where you need to put maybe a little bit more resources towards it, where you do need to play some AD carries that spike a little earlier, like the Kalista, the Draven, the Aphelios. That kind of stuff in the bot side. Tristana becoming.
You don't have Lucian Nami, which was a lot of people's answer to that. Actually,
exactly.
Lucian Nami is less viable.
Less good.
Now.
You have to have it. You can't just draft it blindly as now. You have to have particular teams or comps where you draft it now, and that kind of thing where. For the likes of Wacko, who's a phenomenal AD carry, but you're not as relevant on the picks that you were a superstar on, really hurt Beyond. It was better for teams like DFM, who are inherently a much more versatile team, who can play through most lanes, can play a lot of different styles, are mature enough as an organization and as a group of players to flex how they want to play, not just champion-wise, but playstyle-wise.
Yes.
One of the things we've always valued, particularly for Utapon, is his ability to be a chameleon, to play hard carry bot lane, to play, okay, I need to play
Saros
1v2.
was the new player.
To play one,
was
right. But Utapon, you can ask him to play, okay, 1v2, stay safe but get farm on something.
You can also ask him
later.
to play top lane, and he'll play
you can ask him to play top lane, for crying out loud. You know, like there's like that flexibility, not just in champion pool, but in playstyle, is something not a lot of players have actually to the extent.
And honestly,
that can hurt coming into worlds where massive shifts happened.
Yeah, because that massive shift did happen, and DFM were one of the teams. I remember the episode prior to this where we were amping up DFM was they're ready for any meta, regardless of what it is.
As long as they've got the right read, like I don't have a problem with them.
Yes.
Like, as long as they've got the right read, they can play the meta. That's always the issue. It was the issue for RNG as well. Like RNG are atrocious at reading a meta. Like they're great players that can't read a meta to save their lives.
Well, it's
but if they
interesting
ever
because
find
the
themselves in one, then it's great.
Exactly.
Well, and I've recently been hearing, because I saw Cadral clips and some of the Doinby leaking stuff. It's like, now apparently it's going to be Galio Karma mid. I'm like, oh my god, what is
Galio
going
Karma
on?
No farm support items to funnel farm to Karthus jungle.
Actually, if you want to get an explanation on this, go watch Veigar V2's latest YouTube video. He actually uploaded a video about this yesterday. It's about 6 minutes long.
This isn't the minion getting stuck purposely, and you can break.
No. This is on the support item meta, because this is actually what's happened with the Galio Karma. It's not Galio Karma. It's Galio Karma building first item and then letting jungle farm their lane. They build a support item and then allows them to hyper farm something like a Graves or a Hecarim, which we're already seeing, get them ahead of the curve and have a champion which is just very useful. Now, if you stack up a support item at that point, it actually counts as a legendary item. So if you have a useful mythic stat on your first item, say it's something like Magic Pen or AP for something like an Everfrost, or cooldown reduction from something like
oh my god, and they have so much vision.
And then if you get something like a Vigilant Wardstone afterwards, that also counts as a legendary item for really cheap. So you're getting a lot of free stats tacked on, which is also similar to my logic, buying stuff like Medjai's and Snowball Champions, because you're getting ahead of the curve through spending less gold. It's very cheap, but still valuable. Now, doing that on something like supportive champions can obviously be really, really effective. So when you have so many damn good junglers in the tournament, holy moly, this is
feels like we're moving towards ardent sensible shit. Like we are that close to being like in bullshit territory. We're not there, because I think we would have seen it in play-ins if we were.
What it's also trading is who has more than 2 items in your team. Because the thing is, in a jungle game where you don't get hyper snowballed, you tend to hit 2.5 items by the end of a normal game. Probably. Maybe a third if things go super well. But that's kind of the point. You're looking at Mythic.
What do you mean? 5 items Eri? Same tap patch, right?
For jungle specifically, right? Where you kind of like, you expect on something like, what's a good example? Like your Trundle to have something like Divine Sundra, Frozen Heart, maybe get to a third item. Same sort of deal with Sejuani. If instead you're saying, okay, well, my Galio mid has got Everfrost plus support item and maybe halfway to a Vigilant Water or a Vigilant Wardstone in a game, that's cool. But on the other side, I've now got 3-4 items on my Graves in the jungle. Oh, I'm happy with that.
Apparently, you can also do this similar stuff with some Enchanter support lanes too. So with Lucian Nami, what you do is you get like if you have 400-ish gold on your first on like kind of spare, and you don't have like room for a pickaxe or something, you go for a sickle. You farm the melee minions, which are worth more gold, right? You let Nami or something like that hit the back minions, which means that for the next couple of waves, you're kind of like you're poking out as the AD carry, taking the more valuable minions, and then the Nami's getting a little bit ahead in terms of that gold too, because something like an Imperial Mandate spike is actually really, really important for them. And again, seriously, I'm basically just paraphrasing what Veigar V2 does on their YouTube video, but it's really interesting to say that. And there was a game of this which almost worked out, like in terms of the full strategy, actually in the NLC Aurora Cup, which is like the amateur versus the pro teams thing. So I think it was Chaos Gaming. Or whatever, Chaos, they had a game of that with Lucian Nami, so go check that out. There are some lanes which can make this work, and this is the kind of tech which can ruin a tournament. Like, low-key, it can ruin a tournament, because we're talking about this whole thing about meta reads and all this other stuff. We saw how much the meta changed from play-ins to groups last tournament. We're going to see that again here. Should we go back to DFM very briefly outside of wide meta stuff? Because there's some more points I want to chat about them.
Yes, please, by all means, let's go back
Let's do
over
it.
Yeah.
DFM in this is about their group, though. I'd like to keep it on that stage
Sure. Yes,
before we
because-
get to Loud and their BO5 there.
Because I think one thing my read on it is that pretty much every game, even into the best of fives, one of the things which had against GFM is that actually every game someone dropped the ball. First 2 games it was Ebby. We had Yaharong have a game or two where he was pushing in, not actually connected with jungle support. He just died for pushing in on something like a Victor, fell quite far behind. We had Harp have the game 1 versus Loud on Morgana. After being our most consistent player, had a pretty awful Morgana game. I'll forgive him the Alistair game because that was a bad draft, but the Morgana game was solely on him just losing level 1 trades against a lane, which you only lose at level 1. So that was not so great. So it felt like DFM, they were very versatile, but they were individually inconsistent across the entire team almost. I think Utapon had a good
I think Udapon's
overall.
probably the most stable.
Yeah.
And even then there were 1 or 2 team fights like App, we should have been caught by that ult. But that's like micro stuff when it's against other good players who can kind of read you a bit better than other people, where you like sometimes go, is that a mistake? Is that someone just being as good as you, basically?
Honestly, the bigger takeaway for me was that Yaharong kind of put the NA GOAT in his place. That was
I mean, hell,
bigger
he was
takeaway.
gapping pretty much everybody. Well, once after the first 2 games, he was a bit like
He had to get the rust off. He had to get a bit of rust off. He was jet lagged still. That was it.
Yeah,
clearly.
But like he was getting ridiculous CS leads on things like the Azir. Like he was at like 220 CS at 18 minutes something in one game. It was like that is obscene actually. Like he was doing really impressive stuff in some of these games, and like he gapped Tinone pretty heavily throughout the series against Loud. He had some very good stats against Xiaohu of all people as well, even when attention was thrown his way. And actually, he did a pretty good job of surviving a lot of pressure mid. I think it was 1 game where he kind of entered it a little bit, getting a bit caught out from ganks. But largely, he was pretty good at being very slippery on, champions that are good at being slippery, the Azir, the Ahri, all the rest of it. But he still did that very, very well. And yeah, I think for all that there was always one player that would kind of like go for plays, get caught out, kind of into bit. Happened pretty much everywhere. Ebby losing some 1v1s he shouldn't have. We talked about Harp. Yarn going to Steel definitely had that as well. It didn't feel like everyone else was then like having a quiet game and thus we just lost passively. It always felt like everybody was at least trying to match or outmatch their opponents. And even when one person was having a bad game, most other people were having pretty good ones, which is a good sign, really.
I'd say there were only, outside of the BO5s, because they're a different thing, I'd say there's only 1 best of 1 game that went pretty bad across the board, really. Tiebreaker match versus EG. That was a rough game. But that's that's also a BO1 environment thing. Like, you could just have a game like that where in scrims you go, yeah, no, re-10, fuck it. Just we're not going to win this game. But you have to play the rest of it out. Sometimes 2 to 3 lanes fall apart in 1v1 scenarios. Like, that just happens. And honestly, we got the win over EG when we really needed it to make sure we were going to get in guaranteed for groups. No tiebreakers versus like BYG to make sure we...
Well, arguably the big loss was versus Loud. In the best of ones, where that was very early on, because actually if we'd just won that, don't actually have any of the tiebreaker answers, you're second straight up. But we are coming to recognize more and more that DFM are slow starters in international best of 1 formats.
They're slow starters even in their home region, remember? They went back, first game, lost to Sengoku.
Yeah, because
they didn't look particularly coherent first couple of weeks. Yeah.
DFM are particularly good at looking at an opponent and figuring out this specific team's playstyle and weaknesses and forming a series meta rather than conforming to the overall tournament meta. And it kind of slots into that, right? But as we saw more and more, they kind of moved away from like, oh yeah, this is kind of meta, and just went towards like comfort picks. They had Vex to get prior level 1. They had like the Nard coming back out for Ebby and saying, actually, yeah, everyone's playing Aatrox. Yeah, we'll put Ebby on Nard and he'll just neutralize the lane.
Cannon
because
as well, right? Yeah.
Other players won't do that. I mean, the Cannon was a little bit less good. On
It got significantly better. The first couple of games the Cannon looked very bad, but again, you saw. I think Ebby had a very weak tournament to begin with, and had a very good tournament by the end of it. But like particularly with things like the Cannon, is like he was behind when he picked the Cannon. It was a bit of a non-factor, and then he picks it again later, and it looks so much better. And so like I think even in that point, there's that kind of ramp up of players feeling themselves across the the tournament,
apparently
not just
on the
drafts.
apparently on the first day as well, Abby was saying that potentially they had altitude sickness. They didn't have. They were obviously isolated from. They were isolated from because actually Mexico City is at like
200, something like that.
200 meters or something like that. It's
double
crazy
check.
high above, and obviously like the Tokyo Bay Area is like
Very low.
flat. So you're on sea level going like 2 kilometers up, and it's like, yeah, actually that's not something which many people would have considered. And because a lot of the teams flew in late, that was not something that they could address within a reasonable time span. They had the false positive COVID test, which meant that they had to play in isolation. Apparently, when they were in isolation, they didn't have practice PCs. This is not something isolated to DFM. Apparently, other teams had these sort of issues too. But it's just worth noting the amount of rocky things, things which added to the rocky start.
Makes things quite
for
hard.
DFM at this point. But yes, I think to DFM's credit, though, this is where we saw. I mean, the big point for me on DFM coming into this tournament was they are the most versatile play-ins, like minor region team. They will play through any lane. They will be able to adapt to whatever. They just need time to adapt. Now, that's the difficult part, because you don't have time to adapt
against 3 days.
Things like this. And actually, they probably shouldn't have lost to Loud. We saw how much they were a better team in the best of 5 against Loud. And even that first game, that was like a really uncharacteristic loss to them. But this is what happens. You can't afford to have a slow start, because better or not, quote unquote, if you don't turn up on the day in the first best of 1, well, who cares?
Yeah.
You've taken the L. And Loud were a good enough team to really punish that. And I think Loud had a great tournament.
They fought, absolutely, but they came in completely fearless, right? And especially having been not even expected to make anywhere near finals in the CB LoL, right? Like, this was a team that had a very mediocre spring, came in summer, improved over the course of it, and finally had this incredible run. And like people like Brandser coming in and having on his bicep bot div to throw off to the camera was just phenomenal stuff. And that's the kind of verve that wins you games in the kind of tournament where it is a best of 1 early on. Didn't play out to one in the best of 5 where teams have figured them out a little bit, but there's some room to that.
I enjoyed the memes based around that. That was good stuff. And I mean, ultimately, Detonation focused me. They still made it out. They took time. They went 0-2 to then go 3-0, beating both EG, BYG, and Chiefs, only losing to Loud and Fnatic. And like the Loud game was a 23-minute stomp, and it was like, oh my God, are we gonna is this gonna be the worst worlds for DFM? No, it just they do what they always do. Start off slow, pick it up, ramp through, and every member had a defining moment throughout this worlds. But let's start going in. Sam, what's up? Final point.
Yeah, quick tangent. I did go look up the altitude of Mexico City. Indeed 2,240 meters, which is about 1.5 miles up above sea level. And altitude sickness starts at about 1,500 meters, so definitely something that could well have happened. So there you go. Got the numbers for you all.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Group stage happened.
Yes.
Well, knockout stage. Group stage we've done. Knockout stage happened then, and we got our first BO5, which we've already been talking about, obviously. But let's go into a little bit more depth with it. Loud versus Detonation Focus Me. Now, prior to this happening, we did have to play a tiebreaker match versus Evil Geniuses first. We lost that one. That meant EG ended up facing against Loud because there was a 3-way tie for second, meaning that Loud were the fastest team with the fastest average game time. EG, however, went in and said, no, we're beating you, and decisively got that. It looked like EG really wanted to just get out of groups because they were maybe panicking for a split second that they might not get it out. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to get my my co-host's reaction to this.
Mm-hmm.
If we had won that game versus Loud originally, we would have been second. I think we make it out when we have to play a BO5 versus Saigon or Mad. I think we can do that.
Viable. I think it's probably it's certainly an easier task than RNG, and we look competitive against RNG.
Yes.
I think it's definitely doable, especially with how mediocre Mad looked in the best of. And Saigon Buffalo didn't have the best tournament either, let's be real.
Yeah, I think if it's up against Mad, if Mad played like they did against EG, I think DFM could take that. Of course, it's a very different matchup, and actually between EG and Mad, it is a microcosm of 2 coaching staffs which have intimately known the way that they know that they work. Because they used to work on Splice back in like 2019, whatever.
Peter Dunn, yeah.
Jeez. That was the huge matchup there. I'm not gonna get like too full in hopium all this other stuff. It still would have been difficult. I think if it was against Saigon Buffalo. I think if it was against Saigon Buffalo. Actually, I think DFM probably lose. I think what we saw from DFM is actually that they would get out team fought and outplayed in some very critical moments when they had advantages. Even we saw this across the entire tournament. Actually,
bit sloppy closing out. Yeah, for sure.
A bit slow, and I think what you have gained in serious stability and ability to play through bot lane in the 2v2 from bringing in Harp, and then also Yaharong and having his stable control mage champion pool as well as having playmakers, is you miss some of the magical playmaking which Arya and Gang had. Now, thinking back on it, I do think the Exodia roster was still a little better than what we saw out of this tournament. I know it's in debate. And actually, this is a really interesting conversation. I'd love to get your thoughts on this, you two. But I would say what you have lost coming into this year is some of that magical engage angle and team fighting execution that we saw from something like Aria's Silas or Aria's LeBlanc, where suddenly just pop, the game is actually over at this point. Or Gang's Rakan or something like that.
I was thinking the Gang Rakan.
I think particularly stuff, I think Harp actually has been very good. I think actually Harp over Gang I think that one, I would take Harp over Gang actually at this point.
See, it's the other way around for me. I would take Yaharong over Arya and Gang over Harp.
That's really interesting.
Because I think actually Arya, particularly international, was really lackluster in lane, and I think he would have lost us more games than he won this time around. Even in things like his unkilled LeBlanc game, he wasn't the main factor in us winning that game back at MSI. And his Zoe game again
actually, when
was
Arya
down a lot of CS.
He was often just on Zoe and then just hoping for miracle stuff. I think that when he had stuff like Silas, though, we saw him do the magical playmaking.
But I'm just thinking, like, look, Yaharong's Yone, Yaharong's Azir were actually really, really, really clean.
Yaharong also did pretty much lose, or almost lost us that game where he was side laning on Azir and dying stupidly.
Yeah, but I think he was also the main win condition after Harp had fucked it. But anyway, I think I preferred Yaharong at International, particularly at least at Worlds. MSI, different matter entirely. He was not very good there, but I think.
But then also you think about like Arya's Orianna game, which basically solo won us the game versus C9 in the tiebreaker to get us through to groups that first time.
True. But I mean, but that's true. But Yone against RNG anyway.
I prefer the old Exodia comp. Gang just brought magic, and Arya.
I think. Yeah.
And Arya and Gang only got to play one international event, so MSI performances for Arya also get heavily discounted because they were playing with Coach Kazu, and they still almost beat down one. And he also laned comfortably versus Showmaker, which was peak Showmaker. So I'm willing to go with the old one, but then I'm also very partial to that old one far more than the new one. I do like the new DFM roster. I love them. And Harp and Yaharong, for anyone listening, they have made it very clear to the management of DFM they want to return. That is a known factor at this moment in time. We do not know where things will be going. We have no inside information. I am not claiming to know anything. And normally when we try and make predictions, things go wildly wrong anyway. So don't predict anything, lads. But that's the only murmurings we've heard, and that's official on Twitter and stuff. So
put this back in perspective.
Yeah.
When we came off the end of last year, we thought this should be a rebuild year for DFM. And this is something which I think has really gone under the radar, actually, because people have just been like, oh, DFM were great last year. The really big point that was kind of missed, actually, even by ourselves in some ways, because I think we fooled ourselves and just like, oh, DFM are just great again. They've managed to almost one up, in some ways, the DFM Exodia roster. They had a great year. They've had an awesome 2022. And thinking that after losing Arya and Gang and having this insanely good run through play-ins, getting top of their play-ins group, having, going into that group stage against EDG, T1, 100 Thieves, and almost taking some wins off of them, that was not something we expected to be even matched, even close to it. We thought, actually, they'd be rebuilding for a year, maybe putting another multi-year plan in place to bring in some extra talent, start training them up, maybe find some successors to their great players. The fact that they pulled out these resources is nothing short of phenomenal. This is not something that is supposed to happen from a minor region, which lacks resources, lacks the incentives to have players stay, and somehow they've done it. That is a huge thing for this region.
Very impressive. I mean, I will also say, I think Harp because remember, he was on the KT roster, which did pretty well, and I think he didn't quite count as a rookie in the LJL, because I think he played just over half the games on KT, but he kind of got dropped. He disappeared for a while. And he kind of gets here and he gets a full year where you can see him grow, become a much more confident player. He's had some international experience. It was a little mixed. There were some really good moments, there were some slightly poorer moments, but you can see this guy wants to be aggressive, wants to make plays on a variety of champions. He's had a year. Imagine how good this guy's going to be next year. It's my similar kind of mindset for someone like Targamas on G2, who's come out of the EU Masters, won it on K-Corp, really good there. He's actually had a bloody phenomenal year on G2. He's been so good.
Being a rookie in EU is rough, so that's incredible, actually.
So, and again, he's getting to play absolutely everything and look phenomenal on things like the Pike as well, which is always exciting. Him and Jonghoon were kind of the support players. You go, hot damn, guys. And especially for Targamas, who had his initial chance in EU and it didn't work out. And he drops back to ERLs, gets another chance on G2, has another good go of it. And you go, this guy is this good this year. Imagine what he's going to be like after that experience, a little bit of veterancy going into next year. I think that's my thought for Harp as well. I agree with Alan in the sense I don't think he had the consistent magic that Gang did in skirmishes, in roaming, in team fights. You give him, now he's had this year, I think you can see he's got the caliber and the ceiling to start making those kind of plays. And if he's willing to stick around with a team like DFM, where he's already looking very successful,
he's also
I think
the
sky's
main
the limit
shot
for this
caller.
guy.
And I think one thing which kind of goes under the radar is like, think about how actually poorly Utapon and Gang did in lane versus T1 versus RNG last year. I think
very volatile.
While what we knew about the Utapon Gang lane was effectively that occasionally they'd pop off and just 2v2 kill your asses off. But they would not. They would win lane through big 2v2 outplays, not by this real oppressive, crushing CS advantage stuff. And Utapon and Harp can do that. I think that Harp plays more of a traditional Korean bot lane style. And actually, Korean bot lanes have been the one thing which people haven't had an issue with over the last couple of years. Korean bot lanes are just really damn good.
Because it's not a full Korean bot lane. It's got a Japanese man. They're the GOAT of Japan, potentially. So, I mean, that changes a lot of things.
I would actually say so. Actually, for me,
I don't know.
It's him or
Eddie, but no, it is.
I would actually say Utapon at this point.
Yeah, me too.
After this tournament, Utapon, I would actually say Utapon over Ebby.
I'm sorry. Utapon had to play Ebby's role for a period this year. By default, he's the GOAT.
I think I'd still say Ebby because Utapon's always had competitors. And I think there is something to say that Ebby is the undisputed best top laner every split, practically.
I will counter you, Sam. I will counter you, and I have a very good counter to this. 2 blue mana. It's a pure counter spell here. You know what? No Korean tops are played in Japan. Till we get a consistent Korean top import. I'm sorry. Soul and Secret. I can name a lot of them. Honey. You know, that guy's pretty good. He's Korean, sadly, though. There's a lot of imported, like Zenit, for God's sake. Archer. So many, rookies or just long-time players coming in that role. And Utapon
has still been, top of the tree. Because I feel like a Korean AD carry... So I actually made a comment about this on a Reddit post, which was effectively someone being like, oh, man, you know, there are other contenders to the ADC throne. And I'm like, yes, when they're playing hypercarry styles... You have hypercarry ADCs in the LJL, but you don't have anyone who is top of the tree in both Utapon, who can be a hypercarry, also be early lane dominant if he wants to with stuff like the Lucian Arm, which we've particularly seen this year, and then also be the utility, even sometimes mage player. No one has the breadth of champion pool and role diversity which Utapon has within bot lane.
It's
that,
pretty
for me,
insane.
He's the most versatile player within the LJL, bar none. This guy can do anything. Literally,
he's also
he will play anywhere on the map.
He's also the only guy on that team that you could probably put into a CSGO lineup or a Valorant lineup, and he'd be able to click
quite
heads.
good. This guy can click heads okay. That's true. Good mouse movement.
Oh, God.
But Ebby is also arguably
he's got quite clean Lee Sin, doesn't he, as well? I seem to remember Utapon's Lee Sin,
but Ebby is far more the bigger community impact. So it depends on your Hall of Fame resume here. If you want, if you're a big community person... Ebby destroys the Hall of Fame factor on that one. He is just number one, first ballot immediately.
Also, his understanding of lane, wave management and match. His micromanagement is really good. Anyway, this was initially a point about Harp. This is the thing about Harp, right? Because I think Harp, keep going. Because bringing it back to the Harp thing, I think one thing which kind of goes under the radar is the fact that the 2v2 from DFM. I mean, obviously looking at the loud game, you might think, no, Alex, you're wrong. The 2v2, the laning phase from DFM with Harp in has been incredibly consistent, incredibly solid. I think that Harp has allowed us to play through lane dominant bot sides in a way which we actually didn't have before to that level, and I think that's an X factor which she brings.
And that Caitlyn Morgana game was so unusual for that duo because they're normally actually very good. And in fact, I think part of it as well is you can't go and look at this stat because the game was annulled. The one against Sengoku Gaming where the game kind of got remade. That game, Harp and Utapon demolished it. It was brutal Caitlyn Morgana play. Harp was flashing under tower to get solo kills on the enemy top laner. Like by himself under towers. That was insane. And then you go, maybe they're not a good Caitlyn Morgana duo. It's they are. This was not a good example of it, and part of it's because they really liked to push it, but it was bad.
The bot lane was over. Once that happened, it was you guys have made that abundantly clear. It was over, and there was no way that DFM.
That game was still close. It went to 44 minutes. They did a good job of coming back.
In all fairness, yes, but yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. No,
It's just Robbo's bloody Olaf that we couldn't stop running through us. A
No.
1v4! It was obscene! That
Well,
game
it
was
was-
so
you know, like,
winnable until Robbo was unstoppable.
And it was
Robbo
rough.
actually had
Really
a
good.
pretty good tournament on the whole. He had
Yeah,
some
he
awkward
did.
moments, but like actually he was a real
When he popped
win
off, he popped
condition
off, yeah.
actually
Yeah,
versus us.
which I wasn't expecting.
Well, he got that 2v1 kill on Udapon and Harp, and I was like,
Stop,
yeah, no,
stop,
this is it.
stop.
This is it. I feel good. One other thing I would like to just gauge as we were talking about DFM and Harp and Yaharong. The magic thing that was missing for me, and it was against RNG where I felt it, and it was in that game too. The trigger pulling. It feels like it's that split second off. You know when you have a perfect comp, like it's very good to look at RNG. When they make the play, everybody full committed. DFM, they still full commit. They're maybe just like 0.2 of a second behind one another sometimes. And it's that 0.1, 0.2 which can just make a difference sometimes. And against a team like RNG, are going to punish you when you make those tiny minutia plays. So it's not even like I'm flaming DFM. I'm saying RNG are the team where you have to just be there game one. Repeat your game one over and over again. And if you don't, you make a micro mistake.
I'll say me and Al had this discussion, and like my take was actually DFM could get away with this in LJL because they would make the play, they would be on the same page to go for it, and that's happening international as well. The difference is these other teams are just as quick to respond. And if you have done this without tracking where everybody is, and suddenly it turns into a 5v5 where it becomes a coin flip, you lose some of those. And actually, you look at that versus RNG, it's like, okay, we've made the call to flip top, get breathe on the Aatrox, and RNG just collapse faster from mid lane. That kind of response time is just so much faster at international level, and it burned at DFM a lot more than it did in the regular season.
I want to come in just before. The other reason for this, I forgot to say it, so it is important, and you might change everything you just said, Sam. DFM have also been playing offline. They've been playing online all year, remember? They've not been playing online. This was their first time playing online. No, on LAN, rather. So I want to also say that might have affected them. Again, I want to make it clear, not flaming DFM.
Yeah, because they were scrimming on 80 ping, like, they would win some team fights versus like a Gum or a Saigon Buffalo or something like that.
80
like,
ping! 90,
if it's on like if it's to Vietnam, yeah, it's further away than Korea, right? But if they're scrimming them, then obviously you're on higher ping, which means that your team fight execution is really different, actually.
Yeah.
So sometimes you'd be taking a skirmish or a team fight on LAN, and you're like, oh wait, we actually don't win this. For me, this is actually a bigger point than just DFM in terms of like the thing around here. I think the big difference between minor regions, I think we saw this in Loud versus the absolute throw versus EG, and DFM in similar kind of situations where they effectively the whole tournament they overplayed themselves and they overdove on a play which was not going to work out. The minor region teams don't have that comprehension mid-team fight when something has just gone tits up and they have to be aware of something. I think a great example of this is also DFM versus Beyond in that skirmish. So when it's around about 6-7 minutes in, because Silas has just hit 6 and then you don't have support ultimates on your support yet. This was when DFM had to support Amumu. Silas stole the Amumu wall. They knew he had us in Amumu wall, and they go in for a pick around Raptor Pit, and they're like, sweet, we got a pick. Oh shit, they have a Moonwalt, they get a Moonwalted. Aphelios is already coming from base, has the timing to get to the fight, and they end up losing that fight. For me, this happens a couple of times. Chiefs also kind of did this as well, where feels like the minor region teams, the big gap between them and major regions is understanding midway through a fight what can go wrong, and then not playing around that. So they'll overcommit to something when there are factors working against them. They don't quite have that holistic understanding of every resource available in the game, which sometimes like an EG or a Fnatic would have.
And that kind of ties into the point, because this was exactly the play which started that conversation I brought up. Was like, sometimes what happens is you think you've got a pick, and actually you could get away with that. DFM could absolutely have gotten away with that in the LJL, because they get the pick and get out. The response time and how ready teams are to respond to an attempted play and how cohesive teams are, it's just on another level internationally. So you go for that play, and there's 4 people ready to turn that around on you. And that means that what you think is a free pick isn't, and that kind of risk analysis is what it is, and a lot of League of Legends is risk analysis and working out actually what's the percentage chance of this play, and is it something that's worth taking? And you know, if you're in a game that's losing, sometimes you take more of those risks because you don't have the high percentage chances anymore. But, if you're trying to make that risk analysis factor internationally, it's a different calculation. Because the teams you're going up against, the players you're going up against, are better with hands and better with coordination, and that punishes you significantly more often. Vis-a-vis that Raptor Fit pipe, where suddenly Minji hits 6, flashes over wall, steals the moving wall, and murders you all.
Interesting. So we didn't actually come to a general conclusion. It's more just like there is just a bit of a gap still, ping issues when doing scrims, and just I don't know, not quite as good as the major regions. Like I don't know if I want to just conflate it to that.
I think you can see that they are they are like at the right kind of level. What the difference is, in some ways, it's like part of it is, as Alex said, not quite the same comprehension. Part of the reason you don't have that comprehension is teams are just better. And that means that plays you can make, inverted commas, get away with. You can't skill def, and you can't just think fast check everybody, because people will think fast enough.
Well, DFM kind of did that versus RNG, though.
Oh, exactly.
Actually, which is exactly why I'm like, now I'm of two minds, because actually I'm like, if they're on form, they're playing like they're doing at the top of the game, actually, maybe it just works out. But it's about that consistency thing, and I feel like if you want to get more consistent results, this is another skill set you have to level up. Anyway, I know there's a lot of scattershot thoughts about what happened at the tournament. There's so much which went over this stuff. On the whole, wrapping this up, I suppose, for my kind of expectations to DFM, they pretty much matched my expectations for this tournament, getting through to that last best of 5 for the for groups. I think they exceeded my expectations in the best of 5 versus RNG. I think they went a little bit below it in the best of 1s, where I thought that they shouldn't have dipped so hard early, particularly on Ebby on an individual level.
He was.
I'm happy with what DFM did. It was a hard tournament. I'm glad that they broke some records. First best of 5 international win for the LJL. First game taken off the LPL for a Japanese team as well. Yeah. These are significant records, which should really be highlighted and celebrated. Seriously, put some real respect on this team and what they've achieved this tournament, because they've done some stuff which no other Japanese team has done before them, and that is worth noting.
Huge. Unequivocally, some of the biggest achievements that minor regions have achieved in general, let alone the fact that it is Japanese and that it's kind of the LJL, and this is a region that has honestly struggled historically, like forever. Right, and the last few years have actually been kind of a turnaround point. Hopefully, it's something of a trend, but we'll have to see it a third time to actually get that conclusive data. However, gentlemen, it's time now to move over. Actually, no, you know what? Initialise.
Yeah.
Do you have any closing thoughts for DFM?
I had my run.
Yeah, I was like, I'm kind of happy wrapping it up, and I'm like, oh, Sam, you go.
Yeah, I think we've done a fairly good overview, and I think it is important to note, the growth of this team over the tournament, and the fact that they didn't just capitulate, that they did look better than MSI, that they did actually come in and do a really good job. And I think in some ways, the fact that we are having conversations about the fact that last year wasn't just a flash in the pan and this roster looks comparable is perhaps a little bit of a surprise to us, perhaps at the beginning of the year, but also to potentially the international community, where there were a number of comments saying, look, the LJL is just overrated. And it's like, no, actually, we are quite damn good. Are we at VCS, PCS levels? Probably not, but we're not far off. But we're like, some of these teams aren't far off. They are competing with these guys. They can take games off RNG. And the fact that series against RNG was more competitive than the one of EG against MAD is something to be very proud of. Of course, be disappointed. The fact that there was hope at all means that players are going to go back feeling like, God damn, we could have done it. And fine, go back with that, chip on your shoulder. Use it to get better. And we've seen that growth already. If this team is sticking together for next year, and by all accounts, it sounds like a lot of those players are certainly interested in going for another run at it, I think you should be excited for this team. Hold on to your horses. This DFM roster is something special.
I have another point to bring up, but if you want to wrap up this, we can go into that afterwards.
Go ahead.
So, what Sam just noticed there in terms of the LJL are an overrated region.
Yeah.
Wow, this team's really doing XYZ. So, this is something which I've had personal interaction with a lot of people getting quite disgruntled at me for talking about DFM, because there is a bit of a phenomenon which happens when you are a minor region expert of some sorts, because in the international community, there aren't that many of you. No. So we basically have us, and let's be honest, in terms of the actual social footprint, it's me on Twitter right now, because I've got the fucking numbers. Yep. If I'm posting something there, I will have lots of replies going, why do you hype this team up every year? Oh, these teams are so overhyped. There is a difference between celebrating the successes and pointing at the actual tangible positives of the team and expectations for the team too. I will point out how versatile they are. We will point out how good on an individual level they are, particularly Utapon and Ebby or whoever else on the team. And I will still say they're not getting out of play-ins. That's what I said around this tournament. Actually, around MSI, we said they would be tangling with Pool 2 teams. We don't know how that will go. And actually, despite the 1-5 result, that's how it went. I would say we've actually had a pretty good take on things for the last 2 solid years, actually, on DFM. Obviously, the year before that, we had V3 at Worlds, and that was an absolute shit fest.
We did not get that right
there. But when you are one of the very few people who really is loud about something, you get this kind of phenomenon, because to actually get noticed and get information about your team out there, you have to put yourself in the spotlight. You have to shout louder. That doesn't change your message, but it might change the enthusiasm with which you say it. Enthusiasm is not the same as actually the tangible stuff you're talking about. I think that there has to be a level of recognition for people around minor region teams, and the people who kind of end up going towards supporting them, that there is a difference between being passionate and excited and actually having results. Because let's be honest, I think everyone expects people to behave like the NA analysts do, and sometimes in terms of like, oh god, another year of 0-6s or whatever. And I really appreciate a lot of the North American guys and the LCS supporters, like, still sticking to their guns year after year after all of these cretins come in and say, oh, ha, you overhyped them again, your region shit. Because we've had a microcosm of that for our own smaller region, which doesn't have the same social footprint.
And like, poor old NA, who kind of get the microscopes put on them because they are the worst of the major regions, inverted commas. I say that.
They are.
Yes, but at the same time,
it
makes it so hard to celebrate the strengths and positives of a region if everything you have to say is caveated by being a negative. But they're not as good as this, and that is the problem I think Alex highlighted there. That people conflate celebrating strengths and positives with actual expectations, and that's not the same, because actually we had a lot to celebrate about this DM roster and what makes them good, and what makes them exciting to watch, and what you should be looking out for if they're going to do well. And actually, when I came into this, my refrain was, look, they're in the right weight class to get out of this group. I just don't think they're highest up on that fight card, is what it is. Like, look, they are in the heavyweight category. They're not super heavyweight with the guys in groups. But for play-ins, they're in the heavyweight category. Now, are they the favorite heavyweight boxer to get out of this group? No. Of course not. But that does not mean they can't throw the right punches. They're at the right height. They've got the right strength. They've done the right training. They can come in and make some dents. And would it be a complete shock if they made it out of this group? No. Would I expect them to? Were they the favourites? Absolutely not. But you saw it in how this group played out. They were in a 3-way tiebreaker for second. They did beat Loud in the best of 5. They were competitive against RNG. Was competitive favoured in that series? Oh, hell no. Did RNG dismantle them in a game or two? Yes. But the point still stands. Actually, our expectations and our celebrating of what makes this fighter a heavyweight fighter is this. It's still pretty good. But saying, right, you're in the right category doesn't mean we certainly think they're the best in that category.
Oh, yeah, and
I know remember, particularly like over on the VCS, I know that some people hijacked that, because sometimes people will hijack this and say, if you're not beating every man in your region, you're not coming out first, then you don't actually get to say these things about this team. And I know particularly the VCS has suffered from that, because actually, we've been in international events while VCS haven't. We've been an explosive minor region and getting these cool upset wins. And this kind of somehow around MSI turned into the LJL is better than the VCS. That's actually not true, guys. So, like, I love the LJL. We're not better than the VCS or PCS. I think that's fairly demonstrable at this point. Like, LJL over DFM better than PCS too. Yes, we've seen that, but they lost 2 games versus Saigon Buffalo, and I'd say they're actually quite solid losses there too, actually, even though they were competitive.
Like, we were ahead, but we threw. Again, like, DFM not closing out clearly. What have we seen this tournament? Still some issues there.
There will be hijacking these narratives. Of, like, my heart goes out to the VCS guys, because obviously I know that they have just as much passion for the region as we do for ours.
Hugely
and, like, trying to control these narratives which get hijacked and put off to middle of Narnia, it gets weird.
Or rather, the narratives don't get picked up in the first and foremost, and just random weird narratives get created. That's always fun. With that said, though, gentlemen, Detonation Focus Me sadly did not make a back-to-back group stage, but they definitely did do the region proud. There's one other point I would like to quickly go on before we go on to our next stage, just because Initialise also brought this up about the LJL as a region. I don't know how well Sengoku do in this play-ins group, given assuming things play out similarly. I don't know. I'm a little like my question that I'm trying to ask here is: has the gap of DFM at peak form, at absolute peak, which I think it's fair to say we saw, versus what we know of peak Sengoku, I'm worried that there's almost a team worth of diff there.
I think Sengoku are worse in best of fives, but comparable in best of ones.
Okay.
I think that they have a closer best of five versus Loud if it comes to it. To the point where it might
I
even
don't
be
know
a
if they
3-2 to
beat them.
Loud.
Yeah.
But I think this is the thing for me. So some people on like the post-match thread of the RNG DFM match were like, well, at what point do we give the LJL a second seed over something like PCS? And I'm like,
Not yet.
the problem with the thing about a second seed is that it's there for development of the region, the promise that you're gonna get more experience for your teams, rather than actually them being competitive a lot of the time. And you're using that to kind of like fuel your region. That's typically what second seeds do very, very well for regions like that, because sometimes you will have like this month-and-a-half break between playoffs and Worlds, and actually maybe the second team has a better read on the meta at that point. You've got 10 players getting experience rather than just the 5, and if those 5 players stay on that team, or actually go export themselves.
I mean,
elsewhere,
it's good
the
for
rest
the
of the region
region
doesn't gain
development
from this.
I mean, it's also like it means also for like teams in terms of when you are building a roster, when you are trying to have success, teams like Sengoku Hawks, which were really trying to go for that world spot or that international spot at least, you actually have a lot more to play for, to promise to investors, to convince players to come onto your team more consistently. Because if basically you're saying like you're trying to convince who's a good example, someone like Jet, for example, to stay on your team, it's like, well, why would I stay here rather than try and get on the DFM? Because DFM are going and we're not. It's like it's kind of the angle, or at least it's like a 70-30 chance or whatever it is. And you go like, actually there is something to it. If you got that second spot, there is 50. You've literally just doubled the chance of you getting to an international, especially if there's a team that's so hard to beat. If you've got a Flash Wolves in your region, right? It's like, oh my god, it's so hard. Yeah, exactly. In fact, much more relevant recently. But GAM, for example, for VCS with Saigon Buffalo, kind of put DFM, where it's like, okay, actually, how do I convince teams and players and investors to actually build a competitive roster? Because it's often not worth it. Because actually, you've got this incredible bulwark wall to overcome in the team ahead of you that makes it an absolute nightmare.
Well, gentlemen, let's put a pin in this and let's just see when we return for the podcast coming into probably September. We might be starting it a bit earlier this next season.
Yeah.
But that's because things might be changing, ladies and gentlemen. We'll keep you posted. Follow our Twitters. You know where to catch that all up. But let's put a pin in that, because I'll be interested to see where the LJL even is as a region come next year. Actually, I'll be interested in all of the minor regions and where they are and how residency will be working.
Yes, there are some rumors and discussions about that. We'll see where it all ends up.
I mean, I think it could be great for EU for to just yank a bunch more Turkish. I mean, NA is already sending North America. Like, there's more Canadians at Worlds than there are North American players, and
I mean,
population
Canada counts as North America.
No, it doesn't, because population density for those two different countries is vastly different.
North America's a continent, not the USA. I know. So Canada's North America still strictly.
All right, you English language or lit. You lit, right?
I was lit.
Yeah, all right. You're just good at reading books then. You know lots of words.
Yes.
Yes, I'm just complimenting your play-by-play. More. Be lyrical more, Sam. I love it.
He's a caster and he goes by Lyric. There's no AL at the end of that. He's an LPL caster.
He's a color caster, mate. You're a play-by-play.
I know.
Notice how I've completely disengaged from this conversation.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk a little bit about the group stage, and we're looking forward. We'll probably continue doing the podcast to some extent, as you all know and love, because we like to still keep talking about League of Legends and everything else. With that said, though, gentlemen, group stage is here. Group number, it's group 1, 2, 3, 4, or A, B, C, D? A, B, C, D. A has Cloud9, T1, Edward Gaming, and Fnatic. Group B has Damwon, Kia, G2, JDG, and Evil Geniuses. Group C has GAM, Rogue, I believe that's Top and DRX.
And DRX, yep.
And D has 100 Thieves, Flying Oysters, Gen G, and RNG. Whew, gentlemen, these groups are pretty stacked all in all, and I almost feel like we need more than 16 teams at the group stage at this point now. It feels like every team is stacked.
It's Pretty close. I mean, I think this is one of, like, on paper, closest group stages we've had ever.
It's hard to call. Yeah.
It's just rough, just looking at all of it. I'll be honest, lads.
I think the other thing again is like big meta shifts, and teams got here on a very different meta, and that it always means that what the hell's happening with LPL, because they've often had really weird takes on meta reads that's CFPX, where they think they have a meta read and it just doesn't work, and they completely capitulate. Like, there's always something like that. And you look at some of like the LCK teams and Best of One's pretty scary. Some of these EU teams are no slouches. Cloud9, I actually think, are a pretty decent team as well, even if they're a hellish group. You know, like, it makes things quite difficult to call on multiple fronts. Lots of teams coming in on the back of very different metas with very different strengths. I don't know. I think there's a real world where there's a lot of spice happening in these pick'ems.
I mean, gentlemen, are there any
Yes.
teams you want to really highlight beforehand? Obviously, I mean, it's worth probably mentioning, obviously, the two teams that well, the two slots, actually, rather, where DFM could have ended up, which was Group A and Group D, I believe, because B and C were auto-sorted already due to DRX and RNG making it out of those. Wait, no, I'm...
Or in EG.
What am I wrong?
Yeah.
No, who were the first seeds? It was DRX and Fnatic. They were the first ones that were already sorted and locked.
It would have been a little bit different if Mad had come through, because then you end up with some weird things where like an EU team had to end up with another EU team. So
I'm terrible at doing this.
DRX had to go into Group C. Fnatic could have gone into Group A or Group D, because Mad didn't make it.
Yes.
So those are the two groups that they could go into. EG could go into Group B or Group C, so they have to go into Group B because DRX had to go into Group C, and then that means it's basically a tie-up between like what A and D.
D, yeah.
Okay, so I was.
D would have been fun. A would have been brutal. It would have been T1 and EDG again alongside NA first seed. It would have been the same style of group as last year.
Yeah.
Just replay like it's like yes, Cloud9 are the number one seed, but it's the same kind of vibe. It's like,
we could have gotten legit like like I am angry.
It would have been.
Slap RNG out. No, EDG, you're ours. And then DFM repeat. I want revenge from 4 years ago.
Storyline as well, because Cloud9 obviously lost to DFM in play-ins last year as well. Like that would have been great. Juicy. Anyway, another time, another world,
another one.
Teams to highlight, right?
Teams to highlight, yeah.
I'll throw this one out immediately. GAM in Group C,
yes.
The VCS first seed. We have not seen this team on the international stage in a while. The last time they were on the international scene, they earned VCS a second seed. They were that good.
One very big PSA on this: they are not the Gigabyte Marines.
Gigabyte,
please. So this is really, really important. So I know a lot of people will remember them as Gigabyte Marines because that's been in all the sound clips. It's what people still refer to them as. Gigabyte were a sponsor, which they no longer have. So it's like calling.
They make motherboards and stuff.
Yeah, it'd be like calling like TSM Snapdragon or TSM FDX or TL Honda or something like that. So they are officially named GAM. It doesn't stand for anything. It is not an acronym. It's just GAM Esports. That's it. Now, the reason this is important is because of brand association. You keep calling them Gigabyte Marines on the biggest broadcast they have been on in 3-4 years. That is going to affect sponsorship opportunities.
It has affected them.
Yeah. It has, as far as I'm not sure on that one, but like there is a chance that it does do that. So if you see people calling Gigabyte, please let them know that is not the case. It is actually an important thing for them as far as we know. And also it's just important because like it would be nice to get like the name of the team right. So that is very important. I know that it's a lot of like.
I mean, my bar's
I know it's a lot of
bit
muscle
higher
memory.
than that.
Yeah, I know it's a lot of muscle memory. But like it is very important. It's a non-trivial thing. It has actually affected the team. So be on the lookout for that.
Do it, ladies and gentlemen. Other team. I mean,
like
Flying Oysters are the obvious one. Do you want to go ahead, Sam, with it?
Yeah, I mean, like, I just want to finish up the GAM stuff as to why I highlighted them first, because there are rumors, inklings, that this meta is going to devolve into funnel jungle metas. And GAM is the team I think in a lot of ways will have one of the best ways to play this, because Levi has been playing, not Levi, it's Levi. I keep doing that. It's muscle memory. Levi has been doing things like Karthus, Shyvana, Graves, like for years at this point, and popping off with them. And if you're asking someone who, the Gamma are so practiced with facilitating a farming carry jungler, that I think they could really cause some upsets in that group, especially if that is a viable strategy. They also just play lots of different stuff and a different style to everyone else in that group. And a best of one where people aren't quite ready for it, they could really take some scalps you're not expecting. Plus, the meta might be playing into them. So do not sleep on that team. I actually have them coming out second in that group. That is a spicy pick, don't get me wrong. But I think if there was a team to cause some upsets, I think they're a pretty safe bet.
I'm actually thinking about this now, because I think that DRX actually had some shakes against Mad, against like a farming jungle crazy style. I think that Top are not the most like crazy best of one team. They have some like problems with flipping it, not as much as TAGD, but like the LPL teams, I think that often, because like the way that they play in best of threes is they will really rush you in the first best of one, but that often leads to some awkwardness too.
You get hand check and you lose it.
Yeah, I think that there's a chance that Top could find some issues in this group. I think they're getting out. I think that Rogue, because of the change, if it becomes about this all-encompassing jungle meta or something like that, I think that affects Malorang really heavily.
Massively.
So I actually think Rogue actually get hit pretty hard by that. As much as I really like them playing through their lanes and playing towards, like, you get to stay in your lane in solo lanes, that's cool. If you don't get to do that, especially on Malorang to play hard carry, I think that's actually quite difficult. And I think that Garm actually might even come out first at that point. That's
all right, gentlemen.
I think they could actually come out first based on
that. All right. Well, where we are at the moment with this, what we're going to do, ladies and gentlemen, our audio listeners out there, we're going to have to do a lot of like, we're going to have to be very literal.
Make sure we describe what we're doing. Yeah, that's fair.
Yes.
We'll
what we're going to be doing is we're going to do a communal pick'ems for all of us. Good
you don't
point.
Have the sound on that scene. You don't have the sound on that scene.
Let me copy that. It was impromptu. We decided to do this.
We decided it was quite late on. That's fair.
Last minute. There we go. That's there. And now we have it.
No, that's okay. Does that not have your own audio in it? Wait,
that's just the audio.
Lovely.
Okay, cool. Okay, it's fine. Cool. Tech issues on the fly. We love it.
Yeah.
It's easy. So what we're going to be doing, ladies and gentlemen, is we're going to do communal pick'ems. We've each got our own ones.
Oh yeah, run some polls in chat. See what people think.
But what we want to do is we want to just kind of gauge what people are thinking. Nymaera and Initialise is going to help me out with this. We're going to just kind of do a general just pick'ems. We've each got our own individual ones. But let's actually go straight over to that first one. And are we putting Gam first, gentlemen? I mean, I'm sold on this.
We're going to do Group C first.
We're going to do Group C because we're already talking about them.
Yeah. Okay, so just a reminder for people, so if they don't know or listening in, this is the Group C teams. It's Gami Sports, which is the #1 seed from VCS. You've got Rogue, the #1 seed from LEC. You've got DRX, who are 4th seed from LCK, came in through play-ins. And Top Esports, who are the 2nd seed from LPL.
So I mean,
this is
full
Group
disclosure.
C, not Group A, but yeah.
Yes, this is Group C. This is Group C. I've got Gam as my second team, actually making out in my actual pick'ems. So I'm game for putting Gam either first or second, lads.
Okay, I think we probably split the difference. We put it second.
Okay.
The question is, who's the other team that's making it up? Because I think that I've put it as top. I think that if Rogue get dragged into this style while Malorang. So the way for me that Rogue ended up winning LEC and becoming a really like a significant team was effectively they could bend other teams to play their style. I actually think that Gen G did that very well in the LCK as well. I think that's how they both found their successes. But what Rogue need to do is have scaling team fighting champions on Larson and Odo, the champions which have damage scaling, have the ability to impact fights and stuff like Victor or the Azir or something like that. Now, of course, they actually did find some wins on the Ahri and stuff like that. But for me, I feel like those scaling majors are very important there. And of course, Odo and stuff like the Ornn or other champions who can actually do like actual work in team fights. I think that's very important to them. But if it has to be the other way around, where actually it's like, oh yeah, Larson's facilitating for Malorang, I think that's a huge blow to them. That's my problem. I think that's a huge blow to them.
I think it's pretty clear that Azir and Victor are definitely viable. It's just question is whether, like, if you have clashings of style where the only way to play is farming jungle, then it becomes a problem. If it's an option, but you can still do things like that, big Azir lane presence, get ATCS leads, Rogue will be just fine. But that is a bit of a question. For me, I still think top come out first in this group and Rogue come third. I think.
So
But let me explain.
Chat thinks that DRX are making it out. So
Oh, I mean, yeah, I mean, DRX look pretty. I mean, like,
and
this
the
is
mid laner
thing.
Zika, right? He's already got 15 go. Oh, is it Zeka?
Zeka, yeah.
Zeka, thank you for correcting me.
He's not named after the virus. Please don't do that to him. It was an issue when he first started as well. It's like, it's Zeka. Please, let's get this right because the poor guy will be forever associated.
15 games of Galio, a bunch of games on Twisted Fate. I mean, this guy has played a bunch of different stuff. He's played some games of Seraphine. Like, he hasn't won, but like, the thing is, I feel like if this is going to be a meta where potentially this is the angle we're going, this could be a player that's already set up to do it with recent experience, and I worry about Larson in the mid lane having to do that because it's just not a playstyle I'm particularly comfortable with him.
So because we're listening to chat and everything that we do, it's going to be DRX, Garm, top, Rogue.
Fair. Okay, let's do it. So I'll just explain something about why there's some potential worries about top.
Okay.
They were coming into playoffs arguably favorites, like over someone like LDG. So it's like top and V5 were really up there, and V5 were kind of stumbling and collapsed, and of course they fucking did because it's V5, and all my hopes and dreams died with them. I should stop liking V5. It's not healthy for the heart. Anyway, problem with top is they had some serious drama in the jungle role. Karsa, I don't know what happened with him. There was some mental collapse, some fights with the team. I don't know the whole story.
Yeah, he basically said they didn't want to play. And then
it's like, that's my understanding. He just said he didn't want to play. Like, that's my understanding of it. And that is a big deal with how important, shall we say, jungle is at the minute. That said, Karsa's always been a very good Graves player. He's been that very good Graves player for a long time, and Graves is pretty good right now. So there's a very real world where Karsa comes in, is just fine, is kind of reset a little bit mentally, but there's another world where he comes in, isn't feeling it, is not on the same page with his team, and they don't look good.
Wait, so Karsa's playing over Tian?
Tian is on...
Tian's on top.
Wait, who is... am I just being fucking stupid?
Karsa's on V5.
Yes, that's what
fucking was. Yes. What am I doing? What am I doing?
I don't know. That's why I let you go.
What am I fucking doing?
But I was pulling you back in, mate.
Thank you. I had a complete brain fire. It's Tian. Of course, it's fine.
You started off by talking about V5, so you went on to talk about them. So I was just letting it roll and was like, yeah, we can talk about why V5 didn't make it, I guess.
That's fair.
I was letting him go so long, and I was like, no, he's
because
on crack.
in my pick'em starting, I actually had Tian as the jungler who's going to get the most first bloods.
Oh, for God.
So I was even super high on Tian coming into this tournament. So I don't know what.
I'll save you, mate.
It's not even. I don't know why I had this. Like, clearly, Tian and Karsa are playing on the same team because Karsa was on top last year. That's why.
I will save you.
I'm a fucking dumbass. Thank you for saving me there. That was a complete int.
We are going for Group C. This is Group C because we started with GAM. So we're going DRX first, GAM second, top third, and Rogue fourth. Do my two LEC co-hosts feel comfortable with this?
I hate the fact that Rogue are last, but I think if we're doing this off chat, and I think there's a world where if the meta is not happy for a Malrang, things could look really rough.
I was so ready. Like, put it this way: if it's play-ins meta and you just play scaling mids and like junglers with like team fight impact, actually, it's really good. It's just like this is me coin flipping what the group's meta is going to be. I think that if it's play-ins meta, I think Rogue gets through second or first. I think if it's new meta with like weird farming jungler funnel stuff, I think they are not doing well.
Yeah.
Are we going to try and hedge our bets both way that it'll be both metas, and we're going to just split the groups and be like, I don't know.
I mean, like, groups are always a weird one because people start figuring it out.
All right. Well, let's go on to another group, gentlemen. I want to just keep us going. Let's go.
We're actually starting to climb up in terms of time right now, so let's speed run some groups.
So let's go into Group A.
Group A.
Let's do the hardest group. Nah, it's not that hard. Let's be real, lads. I'm booting T1, EG, and then Fnatic C9, whatever order.
EDG, not EG. They're in Group B.
EDG. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I agree. To an extent, I do agree with Kelsey and Dagda that EDG might fall out of groups. Have their conversation with it. Where if it becomes more topside focused, Flandre has been really fucking inconsistent this split. In fact, this year. And you're also looking at it's Jean-Jia and JJ as well in the jungle, who have also been a little bit hit and miss. Some have been good, some have not. They had
Flandre has also really not been his.
That's exactly what I was saying. Yeah. And Viper is really good, but a lot of the champions he was crushing kids on in playoffs are not as valuable anymore. The Lucian Nami is good, but not as valuable anymore. If you're not as consistently looking to carry through bot, that hurts EDG. And there's a world, therefore, where EDG don't make it out.
All right,
I
so
think there is
Sam,
so much
are
out to get
they
at.
making it out? Are you saying they're making it out?
They should.
Okay.
In my pick'ems, I've got C9 over them because that was my spice. I said, "Fuck it, EDG are failing it."
Okay. Okay.
But that's the spice. I think that. But if you
I've
want to
lit-
see how
I've,
EDG do fail,
I've
that's fine.
literally just put it in my order of T1. Like, that's my order. So Nymaera, where are you at? Because EDG isn't making it out for Initialise, so
I
is
think
it?
I do think T1 are first. I think that on an individual level, they are
We're
still very,
all
very
aligned
good.
with the
It's a
T1
better
nation.
meta for them
I
too.
mean, honestly, I don't care what the meta is for them. I think they're actually slightly. I mean, I know that some people say that T1 are more meta dependent on what they can play through bot lane and stuff like this. I think when it comes to like mid jungle meta, I think they can do anything. I think Owner is incredibly good at anything he's put his hands to, really. And having Faker being
Faker
the
it was.
GOAT, being able to do anything he wants to do. I think this is
Yeah.
not the same situation as like season 7 where it's like, oh god, Faker's like being locked out of mid lane because like everyone can just play nullifying champions. He doesn't care about that now. Not really. He's been playing different styles for different years. I think T1 gets out first. I think that I'm actually putting Fnatic over EDG.
Ooh.
I think that it really depends on Wonder for me, actually.
Yeah,
I think
that's
if Wonder and Razork can outvalue the likes of Flandre and Junjiro JJ on the top side against EDG, I think that becomes actually a very dangerous matchup for EDG because I don't think they're going to instantly win through the 2v2. I think that Humanoid has had a spectacular play-ins. So I think that Fnatic actually have an answer there to EDG.
Rather than rolling a d20, what is chat saying?
Is EDG making it out? That's what they're asking right now.
They're asking us. Well, we're telling them that they're not making it out in general. I mean, I've just gone with them because I haven't watched LPL.
Yeah,
I haven't watched much, so I'm not going to say. I'm just going LPL typically good.
Chat decide. Chat, you decide. I will also say that bot lane for Fnatic has been really inconsistent. Hylissang has been really inconsistent. There is a lot of drama going on in the behind the scenes, apparently, with like Rux is going over being right now.
I don't know what people expect.
It's Fnatic drama. It's always
is exactly it. Like, don't know how much that's true, but I know there's been a lot of conversation about that, about how the team's getting along and all the rest of it. And if you're going into some of the bot lanes in here, Viper and Mako, holy shit, that's going to sting. If you're playing the way you are and you give up kills to the bot lane like that, you do that to Goomer and Carrier. Goomer's had a bit of a rough split, but it's going back towards things that he's pretty comfortable on. He got picked up for T1 effectively off being a ridiculously good Caitlyn player as well. Which you may notice quite good right now. So,
I mean, talking about bot laners, I mean, I'm excited just to see the former protege of Guma Yushi facing off against Berserker, and then you get Sven coming in that new role and everything. It's I'm excited to see it. Have they decided? Have we got a decisive one, or am I just going to put it in Cloud9?
EDG's making it out. Put him second.
EDG's making it out. All right. Well, fair enough.
Sure, we'll leave it as that. All right, Group B, let's go.
All right, I'm going to flick around Fnatic just because.
Sure. NA's better than EU, actually. Yeah.
NA's better. All right. Yeah. I feel like Chris said something. Record,
that is not true. I am still an EU apologist. I do cast the LEC.
Yep, and I'm an NA Hopiumatic, so I mean, wonder why that happened. Who's controlling the computer right now?
Okay, Group B.
Damwon Kia, Evil Geniuses, G2 Esports, and JDG Intel Esports Club. Jesus Christ,
it is. Farming junglers. Damwon are going to be first because Canyon is the best farming jungler in the world.
He's so insane.
Best farming carry jungler in the world. Yep. It's going to be them first. I can't see any other way from that.
It's between JDG and G2 coming out second. Right, let me give you the T on JDG. Now I won't int my fucking junglers in LPL. I am so sorry about that.
Good job.
Anyway, it was very smooth on me. Anyway, Dag to mention this. I completely agree. JDG, great series score, awful game score in the LPL. They had so many 2-1s in best of 3s because they basically just sort of turn up somewhere and go, well, we've got 4, you've got 3, and we're going to hope a 4th doesn't turn up and we'll hands check you. Let's go. And you'll notice that works out most of the time, just not all of the time. And in best of 1s, that playstyle will really burn you because there's a world where they just take that flip and it does not work. And that could well lead them to bombing out in groups because they will basically take that volatile playstyle, which is much more consistent and a best of scenario, and not have it work at this point of view. And like someone like Damwon Kia, assuming someone like Nuguri's playing stably, or if it's Birdo on the top side, whatever, That's great. G2 as well. You know, if they've got a good read, could absolutely take the hands check versus JDG if they're being a little bit disrespectful with it, because they love to be. Hell, even Evil Geniuses, right? Like, we know that, you know, someone like JoJo comes in with Inspired, having a good read, turn up to a play when JDG aren't expecting it, and they could drop games. I think they're probably second. I do, but I can't put them first because I don't think they're consistent enough in a best of one scenario.
They also have JDG also have 369, who's very
Very
good.
Oh my god, he's such a good Aatrox as well.
I mean, I think he potentially 369 could be coming in as the best top laner in the whole tournament.
Yeah.
There's really only what, Zeus and Wayward, I would say. Maybe Doran?
No, I wouldn't say Doran's like.
Yeah, that's why I was like, maybe, but like, I'm like, Wayward is.
And
Zeus,
you heard of my boy Broken Blade, the man of 1,000 champions.
Yeah, who's probably going to get 369.
We'll see.
I mean, well, I'm assuming 9s are coming up every time and not 3s and 6s.
I think that, like, because it's best of one, like, if this was a best of 3 or a series group or whatever, JDG
completely different
every time. I think that Damwon are going to come out first. I think that they are actually, Damwon just with Canyon playing is just pretty crazy. The problem for me is what's going to happen with Damwon's top lane. I think that's what's going to be the real tipping point. I think that I'm going to hope PMG2 is second because they somehow managed to pull off random group stage exits. Crazy.
They do.
So I'm putting Damwon G2, then JDG, EG. I know we haven't talked about EG, but like EG, I think that they did well in plans to like really, particularly in that second win versus DFM. It's like, yeah, they really just downloaded DFM and Inspired had a really good plans. But yeah, I think that for me, it's Damwon G2, JDG, EG, but I can understand this grouping as well.
EG got a rough group, is how I would like to put it for them. And that's just sometimes how it goes. I mean, there's a good chance they'll take a game off of either JDG or G2. I think there's a chance in a BO1 environment they could take a game. I don't think they're doing it versus Damwon Kia. I'm not fucking stupid, but there is also a chance that they just get completely booty blasted, and it's just a sad time to be an LCS fan, but we'll have to wait and see. Gentlemen, let's go on to Group 4, Group D rather, get this sorted, and then we can do a cool recap and see how we're all feeling. Genji, CTBC, which is a bank, Flying Oysters, RNG, and 100 Thieves, or Royal Never Give Up if you're that kind of person. I mean, it's safe to say probably Genji's getting out, and then I'm kind of question marking.
Chovy, if he gets to play things like the Azir and Victor.
If he gets to play.
Yeah, I think that the champions that are coming in, even if it goes back towards more utility AD carries, I will remind you that Ruler is probably the best Ashe player in the world, and he's a very good Jhin as well. So if he gets to play that, Genji will be just fine. Peanut can definitely play the farming junglers. He was a big old school Graves player. They'll be okay. Top side though, I mean, top lane is a potential problem, but even then, I don't think it'll be that big a deal. So I still think Genji should come out first. I think it gets actually remarkably hard to call second because RNG did not look particularly inspiring, shall we say? And no pun to the fact that, you know, 100 Thieves and Closer inspired over on, you know, like other, you know, NA rosters. Anyway, but like, yeah, I think it's quite a hard one to call second in this one potentially.
I almost want to put Flying Oysters. I almost want to.
That's what I've done actually. That's what I've done. I think
I put 100 Thieves Flying Oyster, but yeah.
I think that RNG have shown enough weaknesses against teams which are stable early game that they can get outdrafted and outcomped, and particularly if the meta changes in play into groups and other teams actually have a good read on that, I think that RNG are not the best team at like flipping over their style immediately. I think that, you know, credit to them for trying to play their style and playing around like vision control, picks around stuff. But like Maokai completely destroys the RNG. They have to ban Maokai the entire group stage will play it. Like if Maokai's in the game, it is inherently bad against RNG's particular form of playing vision control and looking for picks on the flank. Like that
because
destroys
the saplings destroys everything from them. Yeah.
Maokai's legitimately the anti-RNG champion. It's crazy. I think that PCS is probably the most underrated region in League history by the community and by whatever. I think that coming in as first seed of the PCS is actually more notable than people give it credit for, and I would like to see them get their chat. This is more like a Hopium thing for me. I really like Koala as well. Koala's like a really good support from Flying Oyster. Gemini and Mission obviously like had a bit of history as well. I think that Oyster have the caliber to make it out as second, and then 100 Thieves. Sorry.
Initialise, what are you thinking right now?
I
Thinking this is good, or you wanna do some
I
changing? You wanna do some 100
I wonder whether 100
or...
Thieves come. Do 100 Thieves come over RNG? Probably not. I think that's fine. So, like, for example, in my pick'ems, the spice was I actually had 100 Thieves second. That was my spice thinking. I thought CTBC would be third, and I thought RNG would capitulate. But I think Flying Oyster's second is a good call, and I could absolutely, and then between third and fourth, I think potentially a bit of a toss-up, because I think someone like Someday is very, very good, but he's also in someone like Breathe, who is also very, very good. So I think as well 100 Thieves, especially if they're playing like they did in NA, could get a little bit in trouble, but we'll see.
All of the LCK teams will make it out. 2 LPL teams and then 2 emerging regions. No LEC or LCS teams will be making out according to our
That's not my
predictions.
pick'ems for the Sim World, but that actually happens.
That would be a first, I believe, that no EU or NA team make it out.
I believe so.
Yeah, because the few times that NA haven't made it, EU still made it.
Yes.
So...
Well, NA's not made it out on a couple of occasions, right?
Yes, that is why they are...
only didn't make it out of Season 4 groups. Season 4 groups are the only ones that they didn't make it out of.
Yeah,
And
it's why...
the Sven Skaren incident.
Yeah, it's why, sadly, LCS is kind of definitively the de facto 4th best major region, just because they haven't got made as many playoffs, right? And I mean, their most recent one was actually with the EU GOAT, so it's even more called into question, arguably, in my eyes. But I mean, that's just a meme. With that said, though, gentlemen, I think we've gotten to a rather good place with those rankings, ultimately. We've got some pick'ems. It's out there for you, ladies and gentlemen, to decide and give us your thoughts. We will be tweeting it out when we post the VOD as well, so you'll be able to give your full thoughts on it if we are inting, or if maybe we have the biggest brain just in time for you lovely people actually to change your pick'ems 5 seconds beforehand, lock them in before that first game is played. But with that said, Initialise, mate.
Hello.
What are you going to be getting up to the next week or two?
How
are you going to be doing?
I'm going to be continuing to ruin my sleep schedule through
yeah, let's go.
Aside from that, I'm going to try and maybe get some article writing done if I can. I'll keep you in the loop on that one. Playing some games, prepping some off-season stuff in terms of like seeing whether there's any additional gigs to get up, and holiday coming up in a couple of weeks, end of October, which I'm desperately looking forward to. Families one of mine, like his aunt, is getting married. I'm gonna go to that wedding. I've got a week away with some friends in a mansion in Dorset, which will be lovely as well.
Yeah.
But aside from that, not too much. Just kind of taking the opportunity to do other things with life for a little bit. Though if I have any more surprise casting, I'll let you guys know. Follow me on Twitter. Find out there.
Follow him. We'll see you when you come back, mate, or whenever. Enjoy the World's Watches. I'm sure we'll be watching them to a degree together in some amount. Assuming I'm not asleep at a normal person's time.
Ridiculous hours, so yes.
We'll see. Nymaera! What are you going to be getting up to over these next few weeks?
Hibernating.
Okay.
Yeah. Trying to figure out what I'm going to do with like work-life balance in terms of like, I don't have broadcasts to be on now. What do I do? So I'll be streaming every now and then. I'll be hopping in watch parties here and there or whatever. I'm sure I'll be around for those things. And besides that, existing.
Important. Stay hydrated.
What are you going to be up to?
I mean, hopefully I'm going to be very busy.
Yeah.
In a good way. But we'll find out. It's that alluring thing I've been saying for months at this point, that people must be like, wow, either Alexi has the best or worst luck in the world. I don't know either now at this point. I don't know. But, I mean, I'm going to keep myself busy. My T key on my keyboard has broken, so I can't really do much writing at the moment, which has kind of thrown a complete curveball into the magic thing, because every time I try and type, either the T key will be there or will not be there. So it's a bit of 50-50. I've done a clean, but I think I'm going to have to replace the full switch. I genuinely think you said T key as in like Tiki bar, not as in like the key, the letter. Oh no, the actual like
I just thought like, why are you talking about like, what are you just like in the mood for a mojito? What's going on? Like
I mean, I could do. I mean, I've been finishing some tea, but I mean that's beside the point.
Spelling it in the podcast. That's what we've been doing.
I kind of need to maybe replace the switch on my keyboard, but it's Razer, so it's actually all module, so
PC
it's not
Master
actually.
Race,
No,
which
it's
is
not
okay,
module, so I have to actually get into soldering stuff, which I don't really want to do. But I
yes.
have got a solder iron, so we'll consider it. I don't know. I'll be busy, maybe, hopefully. We'll find out. Follow my YouTube is where I'm going to tell people to do. Follow me on Twitter, but also subscribe to me on YouTube because I'm trying to make at least a video a week around League content, and that's
Good
probably
content.
where I'll do shows and stuff in the future, and who knows.
Love it.
But with that said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening and or watching. Follow our Twitters at MaskedSwan, at Initialise with a 1 in the middle, and at Nymaera. Follow the LJL official account. And with that said, thank you so much for listening or watching, and we'll see you all very, very soon.
Bye.
Goodbye.